Next, the two perfect paraphrase. The writer properly cites the source but neglects to put in quotation marks on the text that has been copied word for word or close to it. And this is basically a small... Now this is something that all too often you may forget to do, but always remember that whenever you're actually taking the word straight out of someone else, make sure to always put quotation marks. This actually tells the reader that the sentence they are reading came from someone else and you're directly quoting them. Next, we have the resourceful citer. The writer properly cites all the sources, paraphrasing and using quotations properly, so seems like he's doing it correct, right? Well, the catch, the paper contains almost no original work. So in this case, the resourceful citer, even though he did everything, he seems to have done everything right, cites all his sources, paraphrased it properly, and even properly put the proper quotations, his paper is entirely not even his, doesn't contain any of his original work. Each and every part of it is from someone else, and so even if it's all properly cited, if one were to look at the paper, he didn't actually put any input, his own input in the work. It's completely composed of everyone else's work with no input from him. Okay, then finally, the perfect rhyme. The writer properly quotes and cites sources in some places, but goes on to paraphrase other arguments from those sources without citation. So in this case, the writer, he only does his job of properly quoting and citing his sources half the time, or part of the time. In one part, he at least properly does the proper quotations and citations, but in another part, he goes on to paraphrase and use other pieces of arguments made from other people, but does not cite them. So here we'll be covering now fair use. Give me a moment. So before beginning, I'll be playing a short video on fair use, and afterwards, well, I'll just be playing this video shortly, okay?
When we go on the internet, it's common to scroll through other people's images, videos, writing, and artwork. We might even want to use them for projects in school or at home. And we might think, I found it online, so it's mine. But that's not the case. We can't treat things we find online like a free-for-all. The good news is that there are legitimate ways to use material we find online. But first, we need to be aware of three concepts: copyright, public domain, and fair use. Why is all of this so important? For one, there are legal reasons for protecting everyone's creative work. And there are also ethical reasons to give credit to the people who create the things we see and find online. Let's start with the legal reasons why we should think twice before copying and using someone's work. The first is copyright. Copyright is a legal protection that creators have over the things they create. Copyright requires people to get permission before they copy, paste, alter, or share what someone else has made. Most things that we find, download, and copy and paste from the internet are copyrighted. This means that the people who created them own the content and have a say in how they're used. But that doesn't mean that everything on the internet can't be used. Some creators indicate that their content is okay to be used by others, and other content might fall under what's called public domain. Let's look at what public domain means. When we search for content that's in the public domain, it means these creative works are not copyrighted and are free to use without permission by anyone, however they want. According to US law, some content becomes available as public domain after a certain number of years have passed since its creation. There are also specific images and documents published by the government that are considered public domain. So, when in doubt, search public domain to find a ton of things that are totally free to use. Now, if we want to use a photo, a video, music, or other content that's copyrighted, there are still a few things we can do. We can simply reach out and ask the creator for permission. Many creators are happy to give permission to reproduce their work, as long as they're given credit. The third concept to take advantage of is called fair use. Fair use allows us to use copyrighted work without permission, but only in certain ways and in specific situations. These conditions involve 4 areas to consider: amount, purpose, nature, and effect. First, we can only use a small amount of the original work. This means someone can't copy the whole copyrighted song in their dance video, but they can use a short clip of it. Second, there has to be a new purpose in the project, meaning that we transform the original work into something new and different. Next, it's easier to claim fair use if the nature of the original work is non-fiction or based in fact, rather than creative or fictional. And finally, we need to ask ourselves whether the effect of the new work negatively affects the creator or the value of the original content. For instance, are we charging for or making money off someone else's work? Claiming fair use is determined on a case-by-case basis, but it's more likely acceptable if it's 1. For schoolwork and education, 2. For criticizing or commenting on something, 3. For news reporting, or 4. For comedy or as a parody of something. We can think of fair use kind of like a square, and ask ourselves, is it fair and square? So that's the legal stuff. But let's not forget the ethical considerations when using content found online. Think about it. If you created something original and put it online, wouldn't you want others to give you credit for your work? What if they changed it or made money off it and no one knew you were the original creator? That's just not right. So remember, when we go online in search of things to use, keep these 3 concepts in mind: copyright, public domain, and fair use. We're all creative thinkers and creators, and it's always important to give credit where credit is due.
Okay, so fair use. Fair use means you can use copyright materials without a license only for certain purposes. These include commentary, criticism, reporting, research, and teaching. So remember what I talked about when it comes to copyright? Well, and also what you've learned from public domain, here's actually something that's more of a middle ground of those two called fair use, where you are able to use copyrighted materials without the need to license or actually give compensation to the original author. However, this is strictly limited to specific use cases. As we see here, it's either used for commentary. So in this case, when it comes to videos and it comes to teaching lessons or academia, you can actually, if you're in a film class and the teacher has to show a particular film of a recent movie, they're allowed to show that film in class, provided of course that they provide every now and then commentary, such as commentary about how the way shots are framed, how the actors did their roles, or even the literary devices used in the film in order to advance the plot or impart information to the audience. Next is criticism, which in this case is most often found in reviews for movies, video games, and books. Reporting, such as think of ABS-CBN and 24 Horas, or GMA. Next is research and teaching. Now these two are very much related to academia, and so for the purposes of doing your thesis, or at least in my case, teaching you guys on media literacy, I am under fair use allowed to at least use copyrighted materials, but only for the purposes of education, etc. So guidelines for fair use. Here, the majority of the content you create must be your own. Give credit to the copyright holder and don't make money off the copyrighted work. So in this case, in order for my use of copyright material to be fair use, I have to first, majority of the content you create must be your own. Meaning, even though I use meaning the copyrighted material I have is only there to enhance my lesson and it's not my entire lesson. I still have majority of original input from myself in creating the lesson. I merely add copyrighted material only to enhance it further. Next, give credit to the copyright holder. So in this case, whenever you use a piece of work from someone else, make sure to at least properly credit them. That is, make sure to at least give a correct, proper citation in your work, indicating that this particular information you got it from them. And as you've been noticing, I've been using some videos in this particular lesson to help enhance our learning. Towards the end, I will actually be adding at least a link down in the video below on the sources that I use in order to on where I got those videos for this particular lesson. So there's that. And finally, don't make money off the copyrighted work. This means that the particular work I make, I actually at least must not be profiting off of it, as in like selling it off. Now, here are some bonus questions. As always, these bonus questions, you're not required to answer them, but you get bonus points if you do answer them. As always, write them down on a yellow pad, piece of paper, or send them to me directly so that I can actually be able to grade it. Now first, what is plagiarism? Second, what is fair use? And third, can you cite instances where you unknowingly commit any of the examples of plagiarism? So I'll be giving you guys a few moments in order to copy these questions. You may actually pause the video so that you may have more time to copy, and